Sourdough. It is one of the oldest forms of bread still made today, with a history stretching back thousands of years. Before commercial yeast existed, bakers relied on wild fermentation, allowing naturally occurring bacteria and yeast in the air to leaven the dough over many hours. That slow fermentation is what gives sourdough its characteristic tangy flavor and chewy interior. The crust tends to be thick and crackly, and the inside stays moist longer than most other breads. In recent years, it has experienced a massive revival, particularly during periods when home baking surged in popularity, but in many parts of Europe it never went away at all. Baguette. It is so closely tied to France that it has become a cultural symbol of the country. The baguette is long, thin, and defined by its crisp exterior and soft, open crumb inside. French law has even regulated what can officially be called a baguette, specifying the ingredients and production method to protect the traditional version. Bakers in Paris produce them fresh multiple times a day because a baguette goes stale quickly, often within hours. Carrying one home unwrapped under your arm is not a cliché so much as a practical reality of buying bread that has no preservatives and no packaging slowing its decline. Naan. It comes from South and Central Asia and has been a staple of the region for centuries. Naan is a leavened flatbread traditionally cooked in a tandoor, which is a cylindrical clay oven that reaches extremely high temperatures. The dough is slapped directly onto the inner wall of the oven, where it blisters and chars slightly in a matter of minutes. The result is soft, slightly chewy, and marked with those familiar dark spots from the intense heat. It is often brushed with butter or garlic after cooking, and served alongside curries, grilled meats, or lentil dishes across India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. Injera. It is the foundation of Ethiopian and Eritrean cuisine, functioning as both a plate and an eating utensil at the same time. Injera is a large, spongy flatbread made from teff, an ancient grain native to the Horn of Africa. The batter is fermented for several days before cooking, which gives the bread a distinctly sour flavor and its characteristic network of small holes across the surface. Food is served directly on top of it, and diners tear pieces from the edges to scoop up stews and vegetables. A meal shared this way is deeply communal, and the bread itself is as important as anything placed on it. Roti. Across much of South Asia and the Caribbean, roti is everyday bread in the most fundamental sense. It is an unleavened flatbread made from whole wheat flour, water, and a little salt, cooked on a flat griddle called a tawa. The dough is rolled thin and pressed against the hot surface until it puffs with steam and develops small charred patches. It is simple to make, quick to cook, and eaten with almost everything. In India alone, regional variations in thickness, flour type, and technique mean that roti can look and taste noticeably different from one state to the next. Ciabatta. Italy introduced ciabatta to the world in 1982, which makes it surprisingly recent compared to most traditional breads. It was developed by a baker in the Veneto region as a response to the growing popularity of the French baguette, which Italian bakers felt was dominating sandwich culture. Ciabatta uses a very wet dough, which produces an open, irregular crumb full of large air holes and a thin, chewy crust. The name means slipper in Italian, a reference to its flat, wide shape. It became internationally popular quickly and is now used widely in sandwiches, particularly panini, across Europe and North America. Brioche. It sits somewhere between bread and pastry, and that ambiguity is exactly what makes it special. Brioche is made with generous amounts of butter and eggs worked into the dough, giving it a rich, tender crumb and a deep golden color when baked. It originated in France and was historically associated with wealth, since the ingredients it required were considered luxuries. Today, it serves an enormous range of purposes, from hamburger buns to French toast to dessert bases. The texture is soft enough to pull apart with your fingers, and the flavor is subtly sweet, even without any added sugar on top. Pita. It has been a staple of the Middle East and Mediterranean for thousands of years. Pita is a round, leavened flatbread that, when baked at high heat, puffs up dramatically as steam forms inside the dough. As it cools, it deflates and leaves behind a hollow pocket. That pocket is what makes pita so practical, as it can be filled with falafel, grilled meat, vegetables, or hummus without falling apart. In many countries, it is also torn and used to scoop food rather than filled at all. The simplicity of the recipe and the usefulness of the result have kept it largely unchanged for millennia. Pumpernickel. It originates from Germany and is unlike most breads in both appearance and flavor. Pumpernickel is made from coarsely ground rye flour and baked at a very low temperature for an extremely long time, sometimes up to 24 hours. The slow baking process triggers chemical reactions in the rye that produce a deep brown, almost black color and a dense, slightly sweet, earthy flavor. It contains no added coloring. The texture is firm and compact, and a thin slice carries more flavor than a much larger piece of softer bread. It has been produced in the Westphalia region of Germany for centuries and remains closely associated with German food culture. Focaccia. It comes from the Liguria region of northwestern Italy, and Genoa in particular considers it a point of local pride. Focaccia is a thick, flat bread made with olive oil, worked both into the dough and generously across the top before baking. The result has a crispy bottom, a soft and airy interior, and a slightly oily, savory surface, often dimpled by pressing fingers into the raw dough. Toppings vary by region and by preference, ranging from rosemary and sea salt to olives, onions, or cherry tomatoes. It is eaten at any hour in Italy, from breakfast alongside a cappuccino to a midday snack to a side at dinner. Challah. It is a braided bread with deep roots in Jewish tradition and is prepared for the Sabbath and many Jewish holidays. The dough is enriched with eggs and sometimes a small amount of oil or honey, giving it a soft, slightly sweet interior and a shiny golden crust achieved by brushing the surface with an egg wash before baking. The braided shape carries symbolic meaning, with different braid counts used for different occasions throughout the year. During Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, challah is often shaped into a round rather than a braid to represent the cycle of the year. Despite its ceremonial origins, it has also become widely popular beyond Jewish communities simply because of how good it tastes. Tortilla. It is one of the most consumed breads in the world, eaten daily across Mexico, Central America, and increasingly everywhere else. The corn tortilla, made from masa, which is ground nixtamalized corn, is the older of the two main varieties and forms the basis of countless dishes including tacos, enchiladas, and tamales. The flour tortilla, made with wheat, became common in northern Mexico and the American Southwest and is now used widely for burritos and wraps. Both are cooked on a hot, dry griddle and eaten fresh. The corn version in particular has a history going back at least 8,000 years, making it among the most ancient prepared foods still in everyday use. Bagel. It has origins in the Jewish communities of Poland, where it was being made at least as far back as the 17th century. What makes a bagel different from nearly every other bread is the process. The shaped ring of dough is boiled in water before it is baked. That boiling step sets the crust and gives the finished bagel its characteristic chew and dense crumb. When Jewish immigrants brought the bagel to New York City in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, it became deeply embedded in the city's food identity. The debate over which city now makes the best bagel and what the correct toppings are has never been fully resolved and likely never will be. Lavash. It is a thin, soft flatbread that has been made across Armenia, Iran, Turkey, and surrounding regions for thousands of years. Traditionally baked by pressing the dough against the interior wall of a clay oven called a tonir, lavash emerges in large, irregular sheets that are soft when fresh and become crisp as they dry. Armenians have long used it to wrap around grilled meats, herbs, and cheese, and it remains a central part of the cuisine. UNESCO recognized Armenian lavash as an intangible cultural heritage in 2014, acknowledging not just the bread itself, but the communal tradition of women gathering to make it together, a practice that has persisted for generations.